Hello everyone, for OneWrestling.com. This is Bill Apter. Welcome to a special edition of the Apter Chat Face to Face. Today we go all the way from Philadelphia to Minnesota, and a dear old friend of mine, he's not old by any means. Welcome to the Apter Chat, Greg Gagne. Great to see you.
Well, thank you, Bill, but I am old.
No, you're not.
It's good seeing you again. You look fantastic.
Well, we both keep chug-a-lugging here, and I want to thank you, by the way, publicly, that for the days when I used to travel out to the AWA, the American Wrestling Association, you, during my prime days with the magazines, you opened a ton of doors for me, and I want people to know that.
Well, Bill, the one thing that you were always good to professional wrestling and good to the AWA.
Well, thank you.
There were some writers out there that we weren't too fond of, but you always told your side of the story, no matter where it was, and the way you saw it, and that's why we appreciated it. And
well, thank you.
Try to help you as you helped us.
Well, thank you, and I also appreciate that since I do so much work here on the Apter Chat and a lot of TV. A lot of my early days in TV were due to you and your dad letting me do the Pro Wrestling Illustrated press conferences with people like Kurt Hennig, Baron von Raschke, Wahoo McDaniel. Those are some of the classic tapes that are still being rerun on ESPN.
Well, they're being rerun. Why can't we get our little kickback?
I don't know. We're going to have to find that out. We'll have to find. That's the deal you guys made. Today is March 3rd. 2014, and earlier in the day today I called you once I found out from one of our writers, Sean Ross Sapp, that one of his coaches, he's training to be an MMA fighter, one of his coaches had died, and he said, this is a guy that does a lot of traveling coaching, and I know his history, Bill, as well, and it's a guy named Billy Robinson. And as soon as I heard that Billy Robinson died, my first call was to you. Tell us about Billy Robinson.
Well, my father met Billy in Hawaii. He was wrestling over there for Ed Francis and Lord James Blair's. And they said, we've got a guy here from England that we think is fantastic, and he'd probably be a good asset to the AWA. My father watched him wrestle, and sure enough, he brought Billy over. Billy was a hard trainer. He was an excellent technician. And when I told my dad I wanted to turn professional wrestling rather than professional football, he said, well, before you go in the ring, you're going to have to get really trained well, because there's going to be a lot of people taking a lot of shots at you because of me. So you needed to learn how to defend yourself. So I finished my football season at University of Wyoming in December, and I came home, and I was going to have a tryout with the Atlanta Falcons in June.
Right.
So my dad put me with Billy Robinson. He said, here's a guy that'll get you in shape for football, for anything. So every day I had to go work out with Billy 2 hours a day by myself on the mat.
Tell us what that was like.
It was like hell. He was a great technician. He had a great workout routine, so he really got me in excellent shape. And that was like the first hour was all just calisthenics, learning some holds. He'd show me submission holds at the end of near the end of the training, and about the last half hour, then we'd get on the mat and I'd have to wrestle him.
Wow.
And then he would leave himself open for me to put on one of the 3 or 4 submission holds that he taught me that day. But as you're trying to register in your mind, and you see an arm there and you grab it, by the time I'd grab it, he'd reverse it and put something else on me and about break my arm or my leg or whatever he had on me.
Wow.
So it was very frustrating, but that's the way he learned over in the coal mines and over in Wiggins, where they learned how that submission wrestling. So, I did a good year with Billy by myself. And then after the the Olympics in Germany in, 1972, Ken Patera and I traveled after the Olympics and came back, and then Billy trained, him and my dad both trained Ken Patera, Ric Flair, Jim Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, Bob Bruggers, and myself. And we'd go 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And we had to build up Billy's big routine was the Hindu squats, where we had to do 1,000 nonstop by the end of camp, and we could all do it. But he was between him, my dad, training us. We had background, all of us, that we weren't afraid to go in the ring with anybody, including Mad Dog Vachon. I was nervous about that
Right.
one, though.
But not with the training of Billy Robinson.
Not without the training of Billy, and my father. I mean, my father was, he trained probably 100, I think we counted 165 wrestlers at one time that all made event money and made top money throughout the world. And then with Billy's background, and it was a different style, so I learned from my father. Billy Robinson and Red Bastien were the three people that I learned, hopefully, my style from.
All that classic style wrestling. Tell us about the some of the classic matches that your dad had against Billy Robinson. I photographed a bunch of them, and I compare those with, there are less than a handful of people I could say, it's Robinson, Gagne, Briscoe, Funk, those type of matches. Right. Tell us what that was like.
That's Vern Gagne. You'd have to go back.
Yeah, right.
You'd have to go back in time a little bit to get those kind of matches and those classic matches that they had, and it was phenomenal to watch for us, because it was all a learning process, and when you watch those two in the ring at one time together against each other, it was something really special.
What if you could wrap up the and put in a package maybe the title of a book about the life? I know he wrote a book, but if you were to write a book about Billy Robinson, or someone wrote a book about Billy Robinson, they say, Greg Gagne, what would you title this book? What would that be?
The Man of Many Holds.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was. He was a technician. He was a phenomenal submission wrestler, and that's why the UFC, or the mixed martial arts people, wanted to get with him, because he did know so many different submission wrestling holds that nobody taught.
That's where I wanted to go with this now. In the latter part, he died. He was 74 years old, and even up until the time of his death, he was going around and touring and doing seminars on shoot fighting, on MMA.
Yeah, well, he was that good, and I mean, the young guys today, and a lot of the MMA wrestlers, they have to get a background in judo, they have to get a kung fu, jiu-jitsu. They've got to get all of it. But if you watch it when it first started and how it has progressed, it's usually the wrestlers that end up winning.
Right.
And it's because of their balance and their technique. I had a guy just a couple weeks ago. I was at a party with some friends of mine, and 4 females, 4 men. And one of the men there, he said, I've trained in the martial arts. And I said, well, terrific. He said, do you know anything about him? I said, well, I know very little about him. Yeah. He says, well, come here, I want to demonstrate a couple things to you. I said, right. Okay. So I got up there, he went to demonstrate something. I just reversed it, put him down, I put one of those submission holds on him. He didn't know what happened. He said, how did you do that? And the other people were saying, well, they're trained a little bit more than you are.
Yeah,
and then the wives came on, and they were really amazed at all the things that I could show, that I learned from both my father and Billy Robinson. Billy mostly on the submission wrestling, and the techniques that you can handle anybody. You don't have to be afraid of a guy 6'7", 300 pounds. That's the kind of background that he gave us, that I was able to absorb from him. With my size and my name, we knew that it was going to be hard on me.
Sure.
But with that, I wasn't really afraid of anybody.
And yet, one of the things that he taught you, because I know he could adapt himself to any opponent, because he wrestled in Japan, he wrestled in Germany, he wrestled everywhere. One of the things that I know he taught you was how to adapt your size to any type of size wrestler you were wrestling against, correct?
Yeah. Well, that was more my dad that taught me that. What Billy taught me, though, was once I get them off their feet, how to put a submission hold on them real quick. Billy was the kind of guy that I was just talking to George Shire today about it,
Yeah.
and George didn't know that I had wrestled Billy a couple different times, and I said it was really hard because if you wrestled Billy and he dictated his style, it was very hard to compete with him. There was only a few guys that could.
Yes.
Fortunately enough for me, he'd given me enough that I could battle him off, and I had a couple half-hour draws with him. But it was hell in there. I mean, it's tough. You really have to be on your toes, and you have to be thinking all the time
Oh, of course. You know,
what
one
what he's
match
going to do.
one match I would have loved to have seen, and I don't know. I'll have to look up and see if this ever took place. But Billy Robinson versus Carl Gotch. Do you know if that ever happened?
Yeah, I think it did.
Did it?
I don't know if it happened in a match, but I know Billy talked about him all the time, and I know he trained a little bit with him. But
Right. Right.
I don't know for sure, Bill, if he wrestled. My memory, I don't
Okay,
remember.
we'll look it up, and I know people on the internet, of course, will be all over us with that. And what I remember so much about Billy Robinson too was he had so many versions of. I was a suplex guy. I used to love
Oh
watching
yeah,
people, and he had so many variations of
he
suplexes.
it was unbelievable, and that's why you had to really be on your toes, because if he dictated the style in the ring, you were going to end up getting suplexed, or you were going to get bounced on your head, or you're going to get a submission hold put
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
You know, so what most people try to do, and I know Nick Bockwinkel always says he had great matches with uh, with Robinson, but Nick kind of went with the flow of him. But with Bobby Heenan on, they could always keep Billy off his game
Hmm.
because Billy had a temper, and
Yeah.
that was the secret to getting Robinson, getting that temper going where he would open up and forget what he was doing.
Wow.
And Nick was good at that. But
Yes.
if Billy got you in the ring and he dictated the pace of the match, you were in for a long, hard match, and probably not coming up.
Okay. Greg, before we let you go, and thank you so very much, it would be totally impossible for me to not ask you, how's your dad doing?
You know, he just turned 88 last week.
Yeah, happy birthday, Vern Gagne.
Yeah, it was a good one. I went over and saw him, and he was alert and great. You know, and he grabs your hand and shakes it, and he pulls you around and smiles and laughs. And we had a little bit of a conversation. Then he kind of dozed off, and when he came up, then he was kind of out of it. So it's a horrible disease, Bill.
Yeah.
It really is. But the doctors say, you know, physically he's got 20 or 30 years left in him.
Wow, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great. Well,
I don't
please
think
send him our love
I
because
sure will.
he's
You know, thanks
one
for
of the
taking the
greats.
time. And we lost one of the great wrestlers of all time in Billy Robinson,
Yeah.
and my prayers go out to him and Spencer. I know his wife Ula's passed away, but Billy was one of the greats in of all professional wrestling. And I know a lot of other wrestlers out there don't think that, but deep down they all really know it.
Yeah, he was one of a kind. Greg Gagne, thank you so much for being here on the Apter Chat.